Hello, Tim here. Welcome to my channel. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how I changed the blade on my bandsaw. This is a Delta 14-inch. The very first thing you want to do always is make sure it's unplugged. You don't want to accidentally power it up while you're working on it. Most bandsaws, different brands, probably function the same. This particular model here is probably 15 years old. I'm going to go through the steps that I take to put a new blade on. What's on here right now is a 3/8 inch blade. I recently bought myself a 1/4 inch blade that has 6 teeth per inch. TPI means teeth per inch. And this is quite a bit less expensive than the other brand that this is the one I'm going to put on. This is Starrett brand, and I get this at Woodcraft Supply, which I'll link to. You can get that there. They might be available other places, and if you can catch that QR code, you can see that where to get them. This is cheaper, and it's just strictly for, I would use this for soft woods and for tighter curves. On the back of these blades, they'll tell you what kind of curves you can cut with how wide your blade is and what's recommended. So follow that to decide which blade is right for you. So I'm not going to use this blade, but I'm going to put this one on. All right, the very first thing I got to do, I'm going to open this up and open the bottom up. You'll see bandsaw is running on 2 wheels that have tires, and I always inspect the tires are what holds the blade in place. I always inspect these to make sure that they're not chewed up. A blade, especially an aggressive one like this, where the teeth are set a little more aggressively, does wear down the tires. And I've had to replace the tires over the time I've had this saw, maybe 2 or 3 times. But the tires are in good shape. And the next thing I have to do, I bring this down. This is the height adjustment, the clearance. This particular thing here, this has to come out. This is just to keep the table right here. There's a hole because the blade has to pass through here to get it off. So I pull this out. Now, I lost the one that came with the saw. It somehow, I don't know, worked itself loose. And so I made one. The one that came with the saw was on a little, like a hex screw or something like that. And it just got lost in the dust. So I made one out of brass and made it with an antler handle on it. So that's just the only modification I did on this. But it makes it easy to get it out of there and less likely to lose it. The next thing you got to do is open up this dust chute here, and you'll see the blade coming through. There's the bottom guide and the top guide. Now these, I'm not going to have to change it all, but I'll show you what I do if I was going to go to a smaller blade, narrower blade. This is 3/8. If I was going to go to a narrow one and a thinner one, it tells you this is a little thicker than the other one is. And I'd have to adjust these guide blocks. And some saws have, more sophisticated wheels, bearings, and all that. There's a back bearing that keeps the blade from going back. I want to make sure that that's working because I've had to replace these bearings a couple times. Make sure that that's sliding, it's going here, the bearing is moving, so that's important. I let the bottom bearing go for too long a time one time, and it wore grooves in it. The next thing I got to do is pop this cover, this I forget what they call these things. You can get replacement ones. You can see my blade has wandered off a couple times. You can get these in packages of 6 or something like that. Up on top, there's a tensioner. And so I lower this down to bring this top wheel, you can hear it move a little bit. This is a hex wrench that I keep right there so I can see what I'm doing. That's just your blade guard. So I take that off. I'm lowering the blade a little at a time until it comes off the wheel. You don't want to force it. You just make sure you got it loose enough. Okay. Now I'm walking this through that slot. I'm going to show you a trick on how I coil up a blade. One thumb up, one thumb down, and then twist it like this. And that's how you coil a blade. Okay, so now I got my new blade. They come with little twisty ties on them so they don't spring out right away. You got to be careful with these. I probably should wear gloves, but I'm not. I'm too much old school, I forget. To uncoil it, it's a little trickier. You just got to be a little more careful so it doesn't spring on you. So, that's the new blade. And just like you took the old one off, you put the new one in. And get it in between these guide blocks. And this is a little trick. I got to lift this up a little bit. That other blade was stretched out, so I got to lower this even more. This new blade's a little smaller diameter. Okay, now, yeah, just make sure that you're in the groove. All right, so now the blade's in between the cool blocks. That's what these are called, the guide blocks. If you need to adjust them, well, first of all, I need to tighten this up just a little bit. I want to hear a little sound. Okay. Now run this a little bit and see if it runs true. When you put the blade on, there's the adjustment back here that you can tip it forward, and I like to make sure that, because the wheel was canted back too much, so that adjustment thing moves the wheel back and forth this way. This is up and down. This knob back here is back and forth. So now I just make sure that it's running. I can move this guide wheel back and see if it's staying true, and then check the guide wheel on the bottom, and I move that back a little bit and just see how the wheel is running without the guide bearings in back. Now I tighten it up, and there's also in the back of there's a little guide, at least on my saw, that how wide your blade is. This is just more of a guess on how much tension. But it shows you, depending on if it's an 1/8 inch blade or a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, there's a little meter on the back here. Once I'm satisfied, still don't power it up, but run it a few times, make sure everything's lined up good. Now you bring your guide wheel back to just kind of touch the blade. Not push it, but just touch it. So when you run it like this, you see it moving. And same with the bottom. So I want to bring that so it just touches. Both wheels are perfect right now. They're in alignment. So when your workpiece is being pushed into it, it'll guide it just like it's supposed to. Now I use this wrench here to adjust these if they need to be adjusted. These don't, because I put the same kind of blade on as I took off. I don't want to have it too tight and yet not too loose. Putting this back on, and make sure you got this good and tight, because I've had this slip and go into the blade. When it's running, you don't want to do that. Now I put this piece back in here to hold the two halves of the bed flat, and then line the hole up. Put this in here. Pop that door back up. Close it up. Make sure everything's like set tight. So I've got everything set the way I want it. I'd probably give it about 2 inches clearance. One other adjustment is the table. I will take a square. I don't have one in my hand, but I'll take a square and line this up. This might be okay, it says 0 there, and a lot of times it doesn't matter too much, but if I want to make sure I got a straight cut, then I make sure I adjust that. So there's a front one and a back one. But I don't like to have any more of the blade exposed than what I might need to cut something. So I'm plugged in now, and my height is set. This is a little bit of a irregular piece of wood that I'm going to turn a top for a small little salt cellar that I'm going to make. Sounds good to me. Yeah, it's cutting a lot better than the other blade did. Even though my old blade, when I touched it, it would still cut, but I couldn't do an easy turn without getting some burn marks in there. And you kind of know when you're fighting your tools and you gotta replace them. Hopefully that was helpful to those of you that have a bandsaw and were just wondering about some of the nuances of changing your blade out. But definitely change your blade when you see it, when you're fighting with it and it's wandering too much. Make sure you're in a good adjustment. Even though it feels sharp, it's not worth ruining a project, or worse, injuring yourself. So be safe. This is a great tool, one of my favorite in the shop. So thanks for watching. Please give it a thumbs up if you would, and please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.